On August 29, 1776, one of the most consequential weather events in history saves George Washington's army and perhaps the American Revolution. Back in March, George Washington's Continental Army was riding high after forcing the British Army out of Boston. Washington then moved south to New York City, where his army swelled to 20,000 men. He proceeded to divide his forces, keeping some on Manhattan while sending the rest to Long Island, where they dug in at Brooklyn Heights for an expected attack from the British, who had set up a base on Staten Island under the command of General William Howe. The British had also assembled a fleet of 400 ships, commanded by General Howe's brother, Admiral Richard Howe. These vessels were manned by 10,000 sailors and carried a force of 32,000 soldiers. Britain's naval fleet included 45 state-of-the-art ships of the line, the ultimate war machine of its day. Each was made from more than 2,000 trees and equipped with up to 64 heavy cannons. The cost of an 18th century ship of the line was equivalent to the cost of an aircraft carrier today. On August 22nd, 15,000 British troops and Hessian mercenaries landed on Long Island, where they crushed Washington's inexperienced forces. Washington and an army of 9,000 men were soon trapped, with the British Army in front of them and the East River, controlled by the British Navy, behind them. It was a moment of desperation. Washington realized that if he could not get his army back to Manhattan, he would be forced to surrender, which could mean the end of the American Revolution just 8 weeks after the Declaration of Independence. Washington had the boats he needed to cross the East River. He also had a regiment made up of fishermen from Marblehead, Massachusetts, who could deftly row his army, along with its horses and equipment, across the waterway, despite the nighttime darkness and the swift, often contrary, currents. The problem was that these boats would certainly be easy targets for Britain's ships of the line. At this critical juncture, a heavy fog rolled in across the East River. One soldier reported that it was so thick that he could scarcely discern a man at 6 yards distance. The British Navy had to hold back in New York Harbor for safety, and Washington quickly took advantage. Colonel John Glover, the fiery-tempered commander of the Marblehead fishermen, masterfully organized the retreat across the waterway. Not a single life was lost, and the Continental Army lived to fight another day. Glover and his fishermen would continue to play an important role in the American Revolution. It was Glover who organized and executed the famous crossing of the Delaware that December, with his unit rowing back and forth across the icy river throughout Christmas night. This enabled Washington to attack the British at Trenton, an important turning point in the war. Glover played a key role at another of the war's great turning points, the Battle of Saratoga. He and his brigade also joined Washington at Valley Forge, where they suffered a harsh winter, but also received training that prepared them for the rest of the war. Glover went on to help construct the fort at West Point, and he and his fishermen also took part in the Battle of Rhode Island. After the war, Glover returned to Marblehead, which is just across the harbor from Glover's birthplace, Salem. He resumed his trade as a fisherman and merchant, and was an honored citizen of the town. John Glover died in 1797 at age 64 after contracting hepatitis. He was laid to rest at Marblehead's Old Burial Hill, which Mrs. Lewis and I visited in 2024. It is one of the most fascinating and memorable old cemeteries I have ever been to. I may have even taken the opportunity to teach an impromptu history lesson about Glover to some unwitting tourists who were walking through the graveyard. Mrs. Lewis and I also stopped and snapped a photo of Glover's Marblehead home. A bronze sculpture of Glover can be found near Boston Common on the Commonwealth Avenue Mall, along with statues of Alexander Hamilton, Abigail Adams, and abolitionist William Lloyd Garrison, among others. So, what would have happened if that fortuitous fog had not rolled in at just the right time? We'll never know for sure, but it is unlikely the revolution could have continued if George Washington and his army had been captured that day. Like the similarly miraculous British retreat from Dunkirk nearly 175 years later in World War II, Washington's escape across the East River presents one of history's big what-ifs. Here are other events that happened today in history. In 1632, John Locke, whose ideas heavily influenced the Declaration of Independence, is born in England. In 1842, the Treaty of Nanjing ends the First Opium War and grants Britain control of Hong Kong. In 1893, American businessman Whitcomb L. Judson is issued 2 U.S. patents for the zipper. In 1949, 4 years after the end of World War II, the Soviets successfully test their first atomic bomb. In 1997, Netflix is founded in Scotts Valley, California as a by-mail DVD rental company. In 2005, Hurricane Katrina, one of the worst natural disasters in U.S. history, slams into the Gulf Coast. In 2007, heroic Atlanta Olympics security guard Richard Jewell dies at age 44 from diabetes. And now it's time for our Today in History quiz. Which Soviet leader was shot twice during an assassination attempt, but survived? Vladimir Lenin, Joseph Stalin, Nikita Khrushchev, or Mikhail Gorbachev? Think you know the answer? Drop your guesses in the comments below. Find out if you're right next time on Today in History. You made it through Today in History. Nice work. Now treat yourself. Click the video on the right for what happened yesterday in history. Still can't get enough? The link on the left's got the whole playlist buffet. Want to make history a daily habit? Click my face in the middle to subscribe.